Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you are in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Hey everybody, today's guest is Don Zuidema, president of RestoreWorks Masonry Restoration. In 1988, he began as a one-man operation, pulling a trailer that said, "We clean anything." They service Northwest Indiana businesses and residencies by pressure washing semi-trailers, storefronts, sidewalks, and siding. Today, they've extended their reach outside of the Midwest region, offering services beyond pressure washing, such as interior restorative cleaning, tuck pointing, caulking, and other types of masonry repairs. RestoreWorks has had the opportunity to work with hundreds of important buildings and structures, including Tribune Towers, Wrigley Building, the Art Institute of Chicago, Chicago's Navy Pier, and the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Don has served on various boards, including school boards and other not-for-profits, and he has been married 33 years and has three wonderful children, one who's trying to change the world in South America, as we were just talking about. So Don, super excited to have you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. And Will, I'm really excited to be here with you guys and talk about building scale.
Oh, love that. I love when you drop in the name of the podcast. That makes it seem so much better from us. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Tell us about the beginning. Let's hear the beginning stories. Let's hear your origin story, and then tell us about RestoreWorks just in general.
Sure. Okay. So as you said, I started in 1988. I graduated college in 86 and started in a marketing job. I worked there for a year and a half and got laid off and didn't know what I was going to do. I was 23 years old trying to figure out. I had always wanted to have my own business. I was single still at the time. Not many financial responsibilities. So I figured, well, if I'm going to take the jump into starting a business and entrepreneurism, now's the time to do it. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to a franchise show where they have all different kinds of business opportunities, all different restaurant franchises and vending machines and car washes and just anything under the sun that you could start a business with. And the thing that intrigued me was pressure washing. It seemed like a good opportunity. We live in a kind of a dirty area here in Northwest Indiana. I mean, it's a nice area, but we have the mills here, and so we're susceptible for houses to get dirty, and so that seemed like a good opportunity to me. So I jumped in and started a pressure washing business, and I would go around and wash aluminum siding on houses and mobile homes in the trailer parks. I would go on the weekends and wash semi trucks and trailers. I'd be out in front of the White Hen Pantry and 7-Elevens, cleaning the gum off of the sidewalks and cleaning their storefronts and everything. And so I did that by myself for a couple of years, and then hired a helper and started doing work on brick houses, cleaning mortar from off of the brick for residential masonry contractors, and that was a good opportunity because there was a lot of home building going on in the early 90s. And I found that I liked to work on brick structures. I liked the permanence of the brick structures, and I really liked working on cleaning older brick buildings, even buildings as old as 100 years old that had, got soaked with soot and just were black and it was really satisfying to clean these older buildings in Chicago that had never been cleaned before, and just turning them from a kind of a black, grungy looking building, bringing them back to their new life of how they looked when they were first laid up. So that was very satisfying to me. So I gravitated towards cleaning older buildings. And one of my customers one time asked me if I would want to clean a high-rise building. And I was like, well, I know how to clean the building, but I don't know how to, set up that scaffolding and ride up the cables up the side of the building and all of that. And so he said, well, I'll help you with that. I'll have one of my superintendents show you how to do all that. So we went up and we started cleaning bigger and bigger buildings. And we started to become known as one of the go-to restorative cleaners to do for doing that type of work on bigger buildings. That's when we were starting to get into buildings like the Art Institute, and I would go with just a crew of myself and 2 or 3 people and go in at night, after everybody left the city, and we would go in and just start washing these buildings, and really, really enjoyed that. Probably close to 18 to 20 years later, I figured that I had to diversify a little bit, because as the economy ebbed and flowed, if budgets got tight, say for a big building renovation project, that was one of the first things that would get taken out of the budget. We can get by without cleaning the building, but we got to fix these leaks, that are coming in our building. So I felt like we had to expand our services and diversify a little bit. So that was when, in about 2008, we started performing other services like tuck pointing and caulking, and we were already accessing the outside of the building. So it was a nice add additional service that we could do. And at that time already, we had joined a union, and the tradesmen that knew how to do this cleaning also were trained with the tuck pointing and the caulking and all of these other masonry restoration services. So I was able to. It was a pretty easy transition to leverage these men and their skills and talents to be able to get into these other services. So once we did that, then we started.
Of cleaning, like that's when I think of like dirty jobs. Like I'm just going to clean buildings that have been here for 100 years that have never been cleaned before. That sounds extraordinarily filthy, but that's because I'm a big baby and I work in an office. So what do I know?
Yeah, it was extremely dirty. I can tell you stories about, we would work till 4 or 5 in the morning, and we want to be out of there before the traffic started coming in the morning, and we would be exhausted, and we'd be just black from head to toe with dirt that was coming off the building all over us, and wet, it just looked kind of pathetic. And sometimes we would be getting ready to leave, and the workers would be coming in the morning, and they'd be walking down the sidewalk looking at us like, oh, I feel really bad for those pathetic people walking on the sidewalk. I think they thought we were homeless people, but I didn't mind it at all. We don't mind getting dirty, and that's kind of the goes with our trade, so.
For sure. Well, let's so obviously started as a one-man band, one-man shop, and then found other people helping, and then at this point operating 30, 40 people. Let's talk about that. What does that look like? How did you get that path, right?
Yeah, so I think I was thinking about that, and I think there's probably like three chapters with that. So the first 5 years, it was kind of like a learning phase for me. I really didn't know much about the whole restorative cleaning, that type of thing. So I felt like the first 5 years, I was really learning the technical aspects of it, and really trying to dig into overcome some of the challenges with doing that type of work, because it's very difficult work, and if it's not done right, you can really screw up a building and cause irreparable damage. So that was my learning years, the first 5 years, and then I would say years 5 through 20 were I would say starting to scale the business, but not very, but kind of on a small level, probably scaling light, I would say, I would call it. And then,
Scaling light. I like that term. We might have to steal that and use it. This was my scaling
okay,
light time in the
yeah, yeah,
business.
yeah. And then I got into the more heavy body scaling in years 21 through 35. I call that scaling on steroids then,
All
so
right.
that's when we diversified into the other services. We rebranded. We went from being called Midwest Pressure Washing to RestoreWorks Masonry Restoration, that appealed to a greater audience and that type of thing. So I would say, like, in years 20 through, we're in our 35th year now. So probably the last 14 or 15 years is when we started getting better at scaling the business, and I still have a lot to learn with it, but that's when we've had most of our substantial growth, especially in the last 4 years or so. It's when things start taking off, and that seems like once things start taking off, you can envision being able to increase your growth. It seems to get easier, to increase your growth once you start figuring that out.
So let's talk a
So
little
those are
bit
kind
about
of my
that.
three chapters, I would say.
Let's talk a little bit about that figuring it out. So the first 5 years, you were going to the School of Hard Knocks. And then for the next, 20, 25 years or so, you're kind of scaling light, if you will, and learning along the way. At what point was you get to a point where you as a single person cannot talk to every single person kind of on the team? It's hard to manage that, right? And you have to somehow start delegating. Was that hard?
Yeah, that was difficult for me, especially in those first 5 years. I felt like I had my hands in everything, and I I I don't know that I knew enough yet technically that I could delegate, but I think where I learned it is when we started doing some of those night jobs, um, and kind of the light clicked on for me, because I couldn't be out working at night from 7 o'clock till 4:35 in the morning, and then meet another crew at 6:30 in the morning. I it forced me to let go, because, like, if I was I so the first step was being able to have a crew of responsible tradesmen that I could maybe meet at my shop at night, and then have them go into Chicago. And that was very difficult with me. There was a lot of sleepless nights at first where I was just hoping that the phone wouldn't ring, and there was we got somebody's suit wet, or damaged a car or something like that. But then I started getting more comfortable with it, and saw that these guys were doing a good job with this, and so that was kind of my awakening for delegating. And it started with the tradesmen not having to be around on the job site all the time, and then after that, then it was finding somebody that could manage the tradesmen, and then after that, I started to see in the office see if I could get a project manager to help me with estimating and managing the projects. So then there's you got your tradesman, you got a foreman that can run the individual job, and then all of a sudden, then you have a superintendent that could manage multiple jobs at the same time, and then me not having to worry about that. And then in the office having project managers that could help with estimating, because that was my next progression after I had kind of the operations set up. It freed up time for me to be able to estimate during the day, not have to do it at night, with my family being home. So then the estimators and the project managers came, and now the next step for me has been I've been able to have some people working in marketing and have people working on the financial end of it. So, and I've just found that the more help I can have, the more opportunity I have to make better decisions and not make mistakes, because I think I made some bad mistakes over the years just because I was just running around too much and didn't have time to think things through, so that's
those mistakes are we'll like to call entrepreneurial taxes. That's just how it works, right? You got to have the mistakes to know what to actually do.
Yeah. One time in 2000, I remember I started another company, an environmental company, and I didn't know anything about it. I was super, super busy. I was still a little bit in the weeds with the operation, and I started an environmental company that went into the steel mills and did cleaning in the steel mills. And I thought, well, we're a cleaning contractor, so this is perfect for us. But it couldn't have been more different, and it couldn't have been a worse mistake where I lost a bunch of money so quickly. And fortunately, I pulled the plug on it before it jeopardized the main business. But looking back on it, I just think, what in the world was I thinking? My workers are not, they don't mind getting dirty, but it's a completely different trade what we were looking to get into. And my insurance guy didn't think it was a good idea. And I think that was probably because I just didn't take the time to think things through and seek the right counsel to see if I was just making a dumb mistake, which I was. And it was all because I just didn't take the proper amount of time. I was too into the weeds doing too much. So
little bit of
it happens. That was a big tax for me.
Little bit of what I like to call shiny object syndrome. You're
Exactly.
like, all right, this seems like it's going well. Okay, now on to the next thing, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I saw these big trucks that these companies were using, and I'm like, it looks pretty cool, and I think we can do very, very well. But yeah, it was a train wreck for me.
Well,
I love when this happens where it's something that's, at least yours was like cleaning and it's still cleaning. It's different. Obviously you learn that, but like, at least it's not like you decided to go open a restaurant or bar, right? Like where it's like, you have zero idea of what that looks like. And like, that's just such shiny object syndrome where it's like,
right. Yeah.
Why other than the, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I feel like every person, or at least every dude I know wants to, I'd love to open my own restaurant or bar. That would be amazing. That would be, it's the greatest thing ever, but it's awful. It's a horrible decision in business. Like the amount of those companies or those businesses that close are like so high. It's like one of the hardest businesses to have sustainability in.
Yeah. And contrast that with in 2008 when I decided to expand our services, which has led to way more revenue than I could have got from that environmental cleaning company. but it was a much more sound decision because this was 8 years later, and I was in a position to think things through, and it just totally made more sense. And I think, well, why in the world why didn't I consider that in 2000? And it was probably just because I was just running around like crazy and just had my hands in everything, and every waking minute I was busy and just yeah, like Will said, I saw the shiny object and thought it would be really cool, and so
this is also
but
what you're talking about, right? That 8 years is a long time, right? And part of, as you sort of grew and were able to delegate things off your hands, what it allowed you to do was also create some breaks in time and give yourself time to actually think in terms of clarity, right? So having that time, like, thinking's hard, but doing it in long bouts to be able to go, yeah, this is, I think the psychological premise around being in a state where you can think really, really well or get back into that state, it takes like 20 to 30 minutes before you get into that sort of flow state where you're performing at a much higher level, right? You're not constantly interrupted. You're super, super focused. And so that can't happen if you're constantly taking calls, essentially you're playing baker, shoemaker, candlestick maker, right? All at once. And then on top of it, having to deal with some sort of fires. So the last thing you said was marketing was one of the things that is sort of what you've delegated or that you've sort of pushed off and have started doing. I'm curious because the industry is very heavy in sort of handshaking, right? Trust building, handshaking, etc. So how does marketing fit into this picture if a lot of it's still the in-person building relationships? Can you talk a little bit about that and why go in this direction?
Sure. We started really focusing on marketing in last year in 2023. We hired a marketing manager. We also hired a fractional CMO who the marketing manager reports to, and redid our website. We had our best year in 2022. We had extra cash. I wanted to reinvest that cash. One of the markets that we serve is like architects and engineers. And you're right, it is building relationships, but that has to start somewhere, building a informative website that would have case studies that maybe an architect or an engineer would appreciate seeing. So giving ourselves credibility. We're still, even though we started expanding our services, back over 15 years ago, we're still kind of seen as the new guys. There's some companies that have been around for 100 years, 120 years that have been doing this. It is handshake type of stuff, but it's kind of a slow, ongoing process for us with marketing. So we're creating awareness, but at the same time, we're building relationships. And I do really stress marketing with the marketing manager and the CMO, and we're always on some initiative. But I also stress to our field people that they're probably our best marketers because they have the face-to-face contact with the end user. It might be a facility manager at a hospital, and if their perception, if the guys coming into the parking lot or coming into the building, they see us working and they see our professionalism, that's how the relationship with the architect or the facilities manager is created. You got to have a good website, and I think you have to invest money in marketing if you want to grow. But boy, oh boy, it's the people in the field that are very important, and I tell them a lot that they're marketing people as well as just tradesmen. They're not just filling mortar joints in with mortar and caulking joints, and so we look at that as marketing, and also it helps them take some more pride in their work, that they're doing more than just the physical tasks they're creating. We like to make sure that they know that they're making buildings look presentable for people that are visiting Chicago from all over the world, and they're helping to preserve old buildings so that people can see how old buildings were built and perhaps how people lived hundreds of years ago. So it's a source of pride for them, and like I said, I think that's a form of marketing as well.
I love that you connect the big picture down to everybody, where it's, yes, we're putting mortar in and we're doing all these activities, but what's the big payoff there? And it's like, people come from all over the world to see Chicago. It's a definitive tourist destination, and we're showcasing the city in such an amazing light, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and what an opportunity to be able to work on a very cool historic landmark type building, and you're working, and people are actually, while you're working, coming admiring the building that you're working on. And these guys are just thinking, man, that's really cool to play a part in that.
Yeah, no, I love that. So obviously, big emphasis on marketing. What is this? I know it's early in the year as we're recording this, but what are we looking good in regards to numbers and sales and all those kind of things and new projects?
Yeah, so that's another thing we track. We always are tracking our backlog. We probably are well over halfway for our revenue goal for the year. We're shooting to be about a $10 million company, and so our backlog is about half of that now. And we also have a lot of work in our pipeline with really nice things coming up that we're hoping to get signed contracts for. So we're really excited about that. It makes me sleep better at night, knowing that we've already, got over half of our year planned out. And it also helps our tradesmen and everybody in the company really sleep better at night. They know that they're going to be able to get a lot of hours of work in and support their families, and that's very gratifying for me too.
Yeah, and for listeners, we're recording this at the end of February, so Don and his team are about halfway there for a sixth of the way through the year, which I'm not a mathematician, but that's generally pretty good.
Yeah, we're in good shape now, and we're a seasonal business, so we're pretty slow from mid-December through February, early to mid-March, and then we get rolling. And our season really is going to be starting here in 2 or 3 weeks, and the idea is to just pack as much work as we can between now and before Christmas time. So I think the marketing is paying off, and not just from the marketing department, but again, I tell our people in the field that they have a big share of the credit for being able to have this work, because a lot of this work is from repeat customers. The architects will have a successful project for an architect or a general contractor, and so there's a good chance then that they're going to be calling us to talk about whatever their next project is. So
it's a great way to help motivate.
Totally. You also mentioned CMO. I think in one of our conversations you may have mentioned a CFO. And both of those functions possibly being outsourced. Well, the CMO you definitely said is outsourced. Why go down that path instead of bringing it in house? What was the methodology and strategy for that?
Yeah, I hired the CFO. You talking about the CFO or the CMO or just in general?
Either or. You can talk about it all, Don.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you about the CFO. I actually hired him during COVID, which was a very difficult time for us. We We do a lot of work in commercial real estate. And so in the spring of 2020, we had a decent backlog of work, and all of the stuff that we hadn't started that was under contract just basically got shut down and canceled. So in addition to losing all of that work, we weren't getting any calls for work, for basically from March through at some point in July, and it was getting pretty financially scary for us because we just didn't know when things were going to end. And I made a tough decision to, even though we were losing money every month, and your thought during those times is, okay, I got to cut overhead. My thought was, though, I have to have our finance. I have to know exactly how much money we're losing every month. I have to know what my overhead projections are out over the next 6 months and see how long I can sustain this. So I didn't want to hire a full-time financial person to work with me on this. So I through a referral from a peer group that I belong to, I found out about a fractional CFO, and it was the best thing that I could have done because he helped me when we were really down, and so he knows our business now, and now things are going much better, and we know, even though we're busier than we've ever been, and our projects are more complex, and we have more employees, we know down to the dollar on every job where we're at every week in real time. We can tell what we've spent versus what we have budgeted for the job. We know whether we went over on every job or under, why we went over, what corrections we can make the next time. Was it an estimating mistake, or did we have a problem in the field? I can't even believe how much more information we have. Because we have that CFO, and I find that he's hiring him on a fractional basis. He's able to get everything done that we need to get done. Everything I described, cash flow projections. We know 1 quarter, 13 weeks out, exactly where we're going to be from a cash standpoint, based on our receivables and how long customers take to pay, and based on us paying, in 30 days, and based on we know all of that from a very effective part-time financial person. And that was just so I'm a big believer in fractional. We have the same thing with the marketing. We have a marketing manager that works full-time. I don't have enough time or as much expertise to manage the marketing manager. So the CMO is doing that. They meet weekly. I also meet with both of them weekly. We also have a website and digital marketing vendor that works with them. And I have these weekly meetings with them, and I can't even believe it, because before we didn't even have a marketing department, and now I got these 4 people here in our marketing meeting, that are discussing some very high level stuff, especially for a contractor, because I think in construction there's not really that much marketing that goes on unless you're dealing with the bigger companies. So I feel like that's a big advantage for us as well, just because I don't think that many of our competitors are doing the marketing at this level. So
exactly. That's why I brought it up in the first place. Is you're ahead of the curve by doing that, and I think this is the piece that a lot of companies don't, especially in the industry, that don't really understand, is that it becomes a money making machine. You invest that money. Yes, it's like setting aside money for experimentation, right? And the industry is like, well, if it's not making me money, why am I putting money into it? Or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Except that if you set aside money for experimentation, what if the experiment works? Right? Mm-hmm. And in the case of marketing, there is a bit of experimentation in terms of the messaging and how you kind of talk to, create an awareness for an audience. But once you figure out exactly the right messaging, then it's just constantly churning dollars, just bringing more dollars in. Anyone would love to put in, if I put in $1, do I get $10 back? Well, you'd want to then put $1,000 in or $10,000 in, right? And this is the part that a lot of the industry doesn't understand is the first part is a little bit of experimentation before you get to that point. But once you get to that point, just trusting the process, then your company can really like explode in terms of scaling.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of where we're at too. We just really started investing in marketing last year in April and May, and that's what we're doing. We're experimenting. We're finding things that work. We're finding things that don't work. We'll sit in our meeting and we'll analyze. Say a program where a RestoreWorks banner would pop up on somebody's. I think it's called programmatic or something like that, and you can analyze. We didn't get any leads, this month, so at least we know that doesn't work. So maybe we need to go another. Maybe we need to focus more on trade associations and shows and like you said, trying to build relationships where we're face to face. And so, yeah, we're figuring all that out right now. Or trying to figure out what works, and I feel like we're zeroing in more on so that all of the efforts are going to be, good return on investments. But that's part of it, is finding out what doesn't work.
That's right.
Like you said, experimenting.
That's the majority of marketing. It's like, well, what doesn't work? Because eventually I'll hit what works. Right. We talked about the entrepreneur tax. Similarly here, I'm going to find a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but once I find that thing that works, oh boy, watch out.
I think Thomas Edison said it best. He said something along the lines of, or he was talking to someone and he's like, well, it took you 10,000 light bulbs. You failed essentially 10,000 times. And he said, well, I found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. I'll need it and to get to the one that worked, right? So, but then that one, right, is kind of what made the whole idea explode. So it's very similar concept from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so speaking back on the fractional component, we obviously at Spot Migration doing fractional CIO work, we see that similarly when we can help a company from the outside, we get to know them really well to where you're pushing the buttons as that relationship grows. And when you have that longer term partner that is able to just identify things, and then, year in, 2 years in, it's like, oh, you may be fractional, but like you're totally part of the team. Like you are totally embedded into our company. And we see that with our clients all the time. So it's always intriguing when we hear leaders that are talking about fractional components, because we live it every day.
Yeah, that is so true, especially when you go through some challenges together. You really appreciate having somebody, a sounding board, and who's doing what they're experts at, and to have that, it's just invaluable.
I think the other part too is when somebody's in a more fractional role, they're also seeing other companies. So it's like, oh, a thing that I would never have gotten to experience at this company, at your company, like say RestoreWorks, but like I saw this somewhere else already. So now I can already be ahead of the curve, because as we said, right, you're going to make mistakes, and like you're finding ways that don't work. And it's like, oh, well, if you have more experience with other organizations, so a CMO, a CFO, or a CIO, having that then just speeds up the process. Because it's hard when you're just in your own, I only see the inside of our business. So it's like, it's hard to see like, well, what's somebody else doing? What's that experience that's outside? And you'd mentioned being part of a group, of other leaders. And it's like, it's similar concept where it's like, I want opinions from other leaders to maybe like the obvious thing that's not obvious to me becomes so apparent.
Yeah, that is so true, because if you can tap into the one thing, businesses are so diverse, and even within construction, an MEP company is so different than a masonry restoration.
Oh yeah.
But we're all dealing with the same issues. We're all dealing with people issues. We're dealing with how do you get more customers? How do so it's invaluable to be able to talk to other people. And if you have, fractional people or peers or anybody that you can bounce ideas off of, it'll keep you from making a mistake like I made at starting that environmental company.
If the CFO was already there, he would have said, "Nope, we're not doing this. There's no way.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't make
sure,
any sense."
for sure, yeah. What I did made no sense, and it's just because I thought I could have I could just do it kind of how I started my business, but it was an expensive lesson, but it was also a very valuable lesson at the same time.
The value and expense usually go hand in hand to a degree.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about how you guys differentiate yourself. Because let's be honest here. When it comes to masonry, and when it comes to cleaning, anyone can do it. I'm going to put my hands up in the air, but I wouldn't call them the super hard trades, right? So how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, so we look at just doing a good job for a customer and having a fair price. If we look at it from the customer standpoint, that's what's expected. That's a given that we're going to do a quality job. One of the first things that we did when we started really emphasizing marketing is our CMO interviewed several of our customers just to find out why they hire us, what differentiates us. And so what we found and what we really the message we try to convey to people in our marketing is that we are a turnkey operation. So if somebody's going to hire us, yeah, that's a given that we're going to do a quality job, but they're not going to have to babysit us. We're going to have all of the paperwork into them ahead of time. We're going to be checking in with them to make sure everything is good. We're going to, after the job is finished, we're going to continue staying in touch with them and interview them after the job is over to see what, here's your maybe perhaps a maintenance plan, or here's what you need to be looking at, in the future. So it's all about managing and communication. I think our customers really appreciate that they can get a quick response if they need information, if something unexpected happens is uncovered on the job. We can, that's what our customers tell us, is that they don't have headaches with us. We're very responsive on the administrative end, and just help make them proud of the work, and that they can go to their customer. Because a lot of times we're doing work for somebody who's doing work for an end user, and their customer will say those guys did a good job, and it helps our customers be successful. That's what we want to do. We want to help our customers have success, and so that's, I think, what sets us apart.
It's true how much it's missed of just being easy to work with. Obviously, delivering the end result that's wanted, but when you make it easy for people, or for companies in your case, it's just very refreshing. Which seems odd, because that would be why isn't that the goal for every company? But it's not seen as much as I think it should be.
Yeah. And I'll hear stories, about other contractors doing this and not showing up on the job, and I'll just think to myself, how in the world can they continue on in business. I felt like if I did that one time, I'd probably be fired by this customer. So we're always I guess a little paranoid. We always want to try to make sure that our clients are very proud of happy with our work, and that they can present a good product to their clients. So,
Well, I'd say I liked how you put the fact that the status quo of it already needs to be great service, right? I liked how you put that as that is already expected. And then above and beyond that, so interviewing your customers, I think is an awesome idea, because it's not what we think, right? It's what they think. That's actually how you figure out what the market wants. And interviewing.
Yeah, and that wasn't my idea. That was the CMO's idea. That's like his process. That's one of the first things when he engages with a new client. That's what he does, And I wouldn't have thought of that.
That's why you delegate to people that have more experience in these things. It makes tons of sense.
Exactly.
Do you ever feel so? There's sometimes I don't know how best to describe this. So we've seen where the industry doesn't necessarily like to outsource certain functionality because there's trust issues. Okay. And this can come in a lot of different forms. Fractional CMOs, fractional CFO, or hiring consultants versus, well, I could just hire the guy, right? What would you say to the people that think that either they can do it themselves better, or that feel like they should hire the person so that they're essentially yours as part of the company, versus outsourcing where they're not actually part of your company but still helping your company?
Well, it could be a budget issue where you don't have the salary that's required to hire a full-time person, or it could be just a time issue where you don't necessarily feel like you're at the point yet where you have enough work to really keep that person engaged full-time. So, as far as a trust thing, I didn't really have any issues with that. Now, both of the fractional people that I've hired were referred to me by people that I trust. So I didn't have any trust issues with hiring a fractional person over. I wouldn't feel like I would trust a full-time employee any more than I would trust a fractional person. That hasn't been my experience. Both of the experiences I've had have been very positive, and built a great relationship with two people that I really respect and trust. And with the financial guy, I mean, he knows all of my scars and battle wounds with going through COVID, and there's, I haven't, it's just somebody that I think you build trust too as you go along from, month to month and quarter to quarter, and you go through some real challenges and stuff. And I think the trust gets built. But I really didn't have any issues with trust on hiring a fractional person.
Okay. Yeah, CFO. I mean, opening one's books to an outsider, there's a leap of trust there. So good on you. Obviously, it's paid off.
Especially when opening my books up when they looked horrible. And every month I'm just how much money are we going to lose this month? But boy, just to ask the relevant questions, like, where are we losing money? Why are we losing money on a certain size job? We're making money on these little jobs. Why are we losing money on a multi six-figure job? And just asking those questions and getting answers to those questions have just been invaluable. And is a big part of where we're at. You think that, your success is just going to be built on doing the job and doing a good job and make them, but to be able to analyze all of the finances and the why you spent money, where you spent money, and where can you make improvements on it. That's such a big part that I've learned to running a successful business, is to have a really, really good handle on your finances. And it's surprising how many businesses think that, oh, I've got an accountant, so I have that covered. Well, accountants just do your taxes. They aren't going to help you figure out, why you're making money on certain types of jobs and why you're helping you analyze all of that stuff. Accountants just, they fill out your tax returns, and they're good people to have too, but they're not CFOs.
No, it's very true. Yeah, I mean, good on you for realizing it, executing it, and now look at the company is in full scale mode, not light scaling. So we're in a way better place.
Right.
So people, process, technology. What technologies they're using? Usually, when we talk about the trades, specifically those that are working very hands-on, the technology is not at the forefront. But what are y'all doing with your technology?
Yeah, so I thought about that. That was my first thought. I was like, boy, oh boy, I don't know that we use a lot of technology. But then when I started asking my team what we were using, and we do have a pretty healthy list that we've just kind of gradually are using. But we use drones for doing building inspections. That's very helpful for us. It saves a lot of money with, if you can go up and take pictures of the side of a very tall building without having to go, get up in a man lift or set up scaffolding. That's been very helpful for us.
Safety too. That becomes a safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see there's going to be a time when drones are even going to be used to perform tasks other than just taking pictures and videos and that type of thing. So that's
full
I think that
sci-fi movie. It's got the arms doing the mortar moving the bricks.
Yeah. That's coming. I believe that's going to be coming. It's hard to imagine, but I do believe that that's not too far off. Google Earth, we use a lot of that to be able to look at buildings. If we don't, if we're asked to look at something that's in another state or another region, it's very easy to kind of examine elevations of a building or what the roof looks like. If we got to, build scaffolding on the roof, or we have a lot. We use a software company for our payroll foundation, so or payroll for construction, some people call it. We use technology for estimating, for being able to do takeoffs on buildings. In our marketing, we don't rely heavily on it, but we'll use ChatGPT to help us get some information, some AI. Transcribers, we use a lot of Zoom meetings, so we're always having our meetings transcribed. That's helpful for us. I'm not a big social media guy, but since we hired our marketing manager, he's got me all dialed in on LinkedIn, with all the connections and postings and that type of thing. So that's been kind of fun. People, old friends of mine come up to me now and say, well, since when are you getting into social media and LinkedIn? And I'm like, well, I got a really good young guy that's very, very in tune with it. So that's pretty cool. All of our financial stuff is just done on spreadsheets, that's, and it all ties in with our financial accounting software. So our spreadsheet is connected with QuickBooks and also our foundation, our payroll. So all of that is talking to each other and connected. And so that's kind of a taste of the technology we're using. We have also the tracking on vehicles where we can kind of tell where our vehicles are at and how fast they're going, if they're speeding, if we're having issues with that type of thing. So that's been helpful too.
Look, you use tons of technology.
I know. I didn't think we did. Once we start listening, it's like, wow, that's a pretty good list. So
Yeah, no, it's
even though I don't feel like I'm a very technologically sophisticated person.
That's the delegation, right? Like this goes back to do what you're great at and delegate everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So safety was brought up for a second. I'm curious, is safety a cost or investment or both?
Safety is it's definitely an investment. First and foremost, you don't want any of your workers. You want them to be able to go home healthy and intact back to their families and loved ones. You certainly don't want anybody getting injured or anything. So that's the most important thing. From a financial standpoint, I'd say it's an investment because it does cost money to track safety and to provide a safe workplace. There's definitely equipment and tools and stuff that require investments to make things more safe for the workers. And so it's an investment because you get a return on it. We have in the construction industry, you're evaluated on your safety record by your insurance company, and they use a figure. It's called EMR, your experience modification rate, and if you have a good safety record, it's all based on a factor of 1. So if you have a very good safety record and you don't have any injuries for a number of years, your EMR might be like 0.8, and which means that you pay your insurance, your workman's comp premiums, and let's just say it's $200,000. If your experience mod is 0.8, you're going to get a 20% discount. So you're going to pay $160,000 instead of $200,000. So that's a very good return on investment. If you spend some money, make sure that your men are working safely. You give them the tools and equipment that they need to be on a safe job site, and also having a high EMR, like say 1.2, you could possibly disqualify yourself from being able to work on certain jobs. You might have a very nice, attractive job that you really want to get and you're very excited about. And if your experience mod is 1.1 or 1.2, you fill out your pre-qualification and they see your EMR is 1.1 or 1.2 and they just say, we're sorry, we can't, even though you have the lowest price, we can't hire you because your safety record is bad. So it's definitely an investment. From a personal standpoint, you want your workers to be healthy. You also want them to when they retire to have a nice retirement. We are investing. You want them to have a nice pension, and you want them to be. You don't want them to be all crooked because they've had broken bones or hurt their back or things like that. You feel good when somebody retires and they're healthy and they can enjoy their retirement.
Well, I love how you described it as an investment. To the fact of the EMR rating being a 1.1 or 1.2, let's say, right? Well, that increase in workman's comp rates, the way to maybe look at it is, imagine if you spent all that money and put it instead into safety equipment, safety training, right? It's a lot of money. And then in addition to that, the lost job opportunity. So multi-six figure that all of a sudden you don't have the ability. Well, you just lost out on all of that. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's a different way of thinking about it. I love how you said that it's just an investment, not even a cost. It's just an investment. So
yeah. And I had mentioned before how marketing is important for the tradesmen, that our client can see them working professionally and doing a great job and everything. But a big part of that too is safety. If they pull up in the parking lot and see the men doing something that's unsafe, or they see something fall off the roof or something, that they could hurt somebody or whatever. I mean, that's just a very bad look too. So it's not just doing a good job; it's doing a good job and doing it in a safe manner.
It's, I couldn't have put it better myself. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I was thinking those same words, Will. All right, we've gotten all of your amazing insights, but now we have one last question for you, Don. We ask all of our listeners this. So if you could go back 20 years, so 2004, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself? Other than buying Google and Bitcoin and all that good stock, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah. The biggest piece of advice I wish I could have told myself back in 2004 would be we alluded to it a little bit, would be to find a peer group of fellow business owners that you can bounce ideas off of. I finally did that in about 2015, and I think that coincided with some real growth in my company. I joined a group, it's called Vistage, and it's a CEO group. First thing they do is they have you give a presentation on your company, which at the time was Midwest Pressure Washing, and I described what we did. I told our story, and then I said we were getting into tuck pointing, and I showed pictures of the jobs that we were doing, the masonry repairs, and first question that one of the members said to me is they're like, you didn't even ask a question. He's like, you got to change your name. Like, I never even thought about that. Here I am doing all these masonry repairs and all these different services, and we're called Midwest Pressure Washing. Well, what kind of architect is going to want to hire us to go work on a very cool old landmark building in Chicago that's called Midwest Pressure Washing? There's nothing in there that says we do anything. So that night I just went and I found a branding company, and that's how we came up with RestoreWorks. But that's just a short example of what a peer group can do for you, and they will help you think things through before you see a shiny object and just jump into another dumb opportunity, or they will it's just an invaluable thing to be able to have a group of 8 or 10 fellow business owners or CEOs that you can discuss issues with, because there's so many situations where there's questions in your mind and you just don't, there's not a clear answer, and it just is invaluable to be able to have a group of smart CEOs help you out with that. So that's what I wish I had done 20 years ago. Who knows where we would probably be twice the size where we're at right now.
Well, it's a form of mentorship, right? It's a group mentorship. Peers like and different minded, but CEOs nevertheless. That those experience shares can really help facilitate ways that removing the some of the barriers around thinking, because it's just a different walk of life, different perspective.
Yeah, you can pick up one idea when you meet with a group like that, and it is a cost and an investment, but you can pick up one idea that would pay for a whole year's worth of your time and expense that it costs to join a group like that, just in one meeting. Yeah. And that's happened a lot of times with me.
That's awesome. Don, you've been great. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and connect, what's the best and easiest way for them to do that?
Oh, you could email me at don@restoreworks.com, and you can look at our website, which is restoreworks.com, and those would probably be the two easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. This has been outstandingly fun. It was so enjoyable for me. I want to make sure the listeners, like, I feel, I don't know, I feel a very warm feeling. I don't know what it is, but you've been delightful, Don. So to all our listeners, I hope you've had just as good of a delight as we have. And until next time, adios.
All right,
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.
Scale.